You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
And welcome, folks. It's time for
Thank you, Bob Cratchit.
Oh, well.
I'm leaving this in.
He probably is, folks. Oh. October's in the past.
Yeah. But we're still going to be visited by the ghosts of three. Oh, forget it. We're going to be visited by three ghosts tonight.
Yeah, that's true.
The ghost of Jeep parts, the ghost of bank account, and the ghost of upset spouse.
Okay. All right.
Remind me, I have to tell you a joke about that later. But anyways, would you like to begin this show?
I suppose we should
The
start
music
off.
is already playing.
If you haven't figured it out, folks, welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer, general Jeep tech guy, tools and manuals and reading them and using them and that kind of stuff in proper sequences.
And I'm Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy that can't still talk, even though after all these years and over 100+ shows. And yes, I am a true parts guy that has now been regulated to the Juliet and or the back shop counter in the South shop, so I don't have to deal with people anymore. Yay! The adult equivalent of being sent to your room.
Ooh,
so remember,
people.
Exactly. So while we will share what worked for us, like me trying not to talk, and what didn't, it's really up to you to do your research and choose what to do with your Jeep. So after you do this research and not read the instructions
or the script for the intro,
exactly, that's right in front of me,
I would ask you to please read those instructions and, of course, follow them.
Yeah.
Somebody put a lot of manufacturers do put effort in. Some of them hire some illiterate people. I have seen some recent instructions that were better off left unread, but we won't go there.
No, we won't. So, anywho, so it's December 1st. I think we're in shows in the 130s, I think, almost now.
I have no idea. You used to keep track of that, but you've been slightly occupied lately.
Yeah, they're all blending together. It's the Jeep show, kids. So basically, we wanted to just take a few moments to start the show off right by saying Crawling for the Fallen was a resounding success. Chrissy Johnson and all of her amazing crew that she had put on a wonderful event. The weather was kind of overcast and a little chilly, but
a little damp in the beginning, but
it was a great
cleared
event.
up and was a very good event, a very touching event. I had one of those eye-opening shocks that after you and I spent more hours than I care to imagine trying to get through the names list. Sad to say, folks, 2020's name list was rather long, and going through each name and end of watch was tough. And then we get there, and they brought the cops.
The main
concerned.
Concerns of police survivors.
Yeah, concerns of police survivors. They have a semi-truck, and they have pictures of every officer on there.
Yeah,
and that was a little tough to go then put faces to names. But that's the purpose of the event, is to bring it home that this is not just a normal charity to anybody. It's very, very focused to the survivors of fallen first responders. And Chrissy and the crew did a fantastic job. The vendors were fantastic. A shout out to Gulf Coast Drive Shafts, Red Scorpion Fab Works, and South Tampa Line-X, who shared their group booth with us at the podcast. Slightly Altered was there, as was the
Project YJ
and their Gladiator that's got some custom logo work in it. And all the listeners who stopped by and said hi and took a look at things and kept me on my feet pretty much all day.
Well, and also a big shout out to Paul and his wife. They stopped by. Many people, came by and wanted to wish their condolences to me, and it was a moving day very much. And one thing I want to do, let everyone and all our listeners know that already this year, there are over 400 names for next year.
I know.
And so take a moment out to check on the Off-Road United Facebook page and their website and the concerns of police survivors, because, they're definitely going to need help next year. Because it doesn't matter how they fell, whether it be COVID or, in the line of duty, it's still a fallen officer that left survivors.
Yeah. So, sorry, we'll get into the show why I still have the gravelly voice. And no, it doesn't start with a C.
No.
It starts with a T.
Yes. And ends with a J. I have no idea.
But it was a great show. It really was an awesome show. And the YJ went out on the trails on Sunday for the half day where most of the vendors get a chance to go play, and successfully got stuck and unstuck several times and slung a lot of mud all over the place.
Yep.
And didn't break anything.
Yay.
So it's home and cleaned up and back in the
shop.
The shop, thanks.
No worries.
The drive shaft shop in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the Tampa region and you need drive shaft works and you go to the front desks, you probably could go, "Hey, Shane, I heard about the YJ. Is it here?" He'll probably take you back and show it off because he's pretty proud of that little puppy.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. It's a labor of love, as we all know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the bug has hit them very hard.
In more ways than you know right now. But we'll get to that
We'll
later.
get to that a little bit later.
No, and again, it's interesting you brought up the dry shaft shop and all that, because starting the first of the year, I am going to be taking little road trips. Going to if you ever follow the Jeep Mama Tammy, she also suffered a situation. And she is going to take a road trip and do a little finding herself. And it just so happens that I've been instructed to do the same thing. So, of course, after driving back from Kevin's to help him pour a concrete slab, the LG decides to have the little interior glow light come on, the check engine light. I'm like, oh, you jealous Jeep.
Yeah, well, it was cold outside. I figured you needed to warm up that orange glow from the dash.
No, I've been driving the Gladiator too much. And so now all of a sudden the Gladiators are the LJ's wanting a little bit of love, and of course she decided to let go her water pump.
The little spinny roundy thing blows fan air and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the H2O circulation unit. So coming up here real soon, we're going to be doing, not only after the lift we're doing here really soon, finally get it installed, we're also going to do a water pump thermostat, fan clutch. I got an aluminum radiator, going to put that in too, because I want this to have a clear bill of health. But right now it's sitting at
Shane's
dry shaft shop, because I'm going to have him take a look at all the drive shaft bits, all the spinny bits, and he wants to use it for a test mule to do some measurements.
Yep, he's going to. One of the things he doesn't have is any factory stock data on a LJ. It was a limited 05, 06 production, but we're seeing a lot of them show up now, and people are coming to him as an expert now, as he's been doing a lot of Jeep work. So he was bemoaning to us. We were at the show, and yeah, I had another call for this LJ thing, and what is it? And I said, talk to Scott.
Well, it's even more odd for the Rubicon because they use such a different system than the standard one, and he has no information on it. So I told him, well, it's about 10 inches longer. There only 74,000 were produced. Of those 74,000, only 12,000 or 12 to 14,000 were Rubicon, and of that 12 to 14,000, only 7,000 were stick shifts. He's like, I need some stock data. Would you mind if you bring it over and let me look at it?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely.
So he's got it for a couple of days now, and he'll put it up on the lift. He'll do measurements. He's also going to go through the drive shaft, because Scott does have a little bit of the shimmy shake out the back end. And Shane says, I think I can probably, do some prototyping on your Jeep.
Yeah.
And so,
what's a known issue, because there's a giant balancer back there.
Yes.
It kind of like, the key
flywheel.
The keyway on it wasn't really done properly, and there's a bunch of write-ups on how to fix this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? That's all Greek to me. We all know I don't read instructions. Come on, let's just be honest. So I said, you know what? You handle the spinny bits and just let me know when to call.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. And since Shane's shop's relatively close to where I am, I expect I'll be up there helping him, because I may be up there for other reasons as well, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
We
got a lot to talk about later kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, we're trying to keep it organized into proper groups.
Yeah, we want to keep you listening after the commercial break that we don't really have.
That we don't really have. But anyway, December 1.
Yes. And that is a time that, again, we usually bring up a show about,
gifts, ideas
and stuff like that. But, that's what Amazon's for.
Yeah, we're anything with either the logo Jeep, fits a Jeep, goes with a Jeep, complements a Jeep.
You know, and there's an all-purpose. You always get them a bag of zip ties. They always need those. You know.
Or if you're really going high dollar, you can get them one of the multi-size packs. It has
Ooh.
different sizes and colors in it.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you're really bad, you can zip tie one to the drive shaft. Thwack, 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 thwack.
Or the stick-on wheel weights, but that's just really mean.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that one. That's wicked.
I've been in the parts business too long. It's like, anybody seen the wheel weight strip that was just here on the tire machine? Like, there were like 50 of them missing. And you find out who gets that way home, you know?
Yes. So, but no, there's all kinds of Jeep-wise gifts, and now with all the additional models of Jeeps out there, you know, you can start buying things over again, because if it fit the TJ, it isn't going to fit the the JKs isn't going to fit the JLs, and isn't necessarily going to fit the JTs.
And, the alphabet soup.
Yes, and I'm just sitting here looking at folks who had all the JKs and were all superior. And how does it feel to be 3 generations out?
Yeah. Really good, because I drive an LJ.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Yeah.
This is why I don't have many friends, guys. That's what I don't.
And the rest of us with TJs are sitting here going, well, the only thing I can take solace is, and I pointed this out to somebody, was, you know, the TJ was the last of the small-bodied Wranglers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you were the last of the, I can make that turn. And the JKers, you're the first of the, give me 27 shots and I'll get around that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I like was when everyone had said, hey, now the JK guys and how the TJ guys feel.
Yeah.
The JL's out now.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting, how everything's progressing with the Jeep brand. And not only that, we talked about it before, like the Jeep models coming out, the 4xe and stuff like that. So, time will tell. It's going to be really cool.
The Sparky Jeep. Let's see how it swims.
Water and electricity doesn't mix.
Why are all the fish floating belly up?
Hey, their second nerves has the business. But yeah, we're a little all over the road here a little bit.
We are going to be. This is going to be your classic end of year mismatch show, and we can promise you another probably coming up in 14 days.
Well, the only thing I can say is again, and I'll put a little caveat to the gift idea. And Kevin and I, especially me, and this is just how I feel is, if you're thinking about the perfect gift for somebody who has a Jeep, or you're a Jeep family, let me bring a little idea. Just take 5 and take 3 minutes for what it's worth. Take the family and go do something, whether it's just a drive or just maybe a little small wheeling trip or something, because stuff just ends up in the storage unit or in a shelf or in a drawer somewhere. Memories don't.
Yep.
And you don't have to pay a rental fee on a memory.
That's true. And you know what? Some of the simplest things you can do right now, and this one's and some of you, this could be harder than others, but I'm sure you live somewhere near a outside light show, a drive-through light show. We've got a couple here in our area. Believe it or not, in Florida, yes, there are drive-through light shows. Take the top off, put everybody in a parka and a warm suit, and then drive through the light show. Even here in Florida, at night, it can be cool enough that you could get away with it without sweating too bad.
Yeah.
And talk about the Christmas feel. You could throw a little fake, snow on the roof if you really are desperate. But, go take the kids out, put them in the back seat of the Jeep with the tops off and the doors off, and go through a light show.
Mm-hmm. Or organize a top-off Jeep ride to take some Toys for Tots for a charity.
Correct.
Food bank or something like that. Just
throw a thermos of hot chocolate and some mini marshmallows, and bring some mugs, and prepare to clean up. And I mean the Jeep.
Exactly.
But, those kind of memories are a lot of fun. They really are. Just do me one favor if you do that.
What's that?
Turn off the light bar.
Yeah, please do.
Hey, those lights don't look very bright. We'll turn the light bar off, and maybe you'll see some color.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, please.
But no, there's lots of things that you can do, And if you want to make it a Jeep Christmas, when you go get the tree, leave the top off.
Mm-hmm.
They actually ride on the roll bar pretty good. Just be careful on the windshield. You don't crack it. But, there's something about having a big fir tree balled up on top of your Jeep driving down the road.
It's funny you said that. I just shared a memory of me having the Christmas tree inside the back of the YJ going, look, a pine seed Jeep air freshener, pine scented Jeep air freshener.
Exactly. So there's a lot of fun things that can be done that way.
Well, there's a little caveat I'm gonna say just because I'm in that situation is, the past couple years have been hard on a lot of people, and if you know somebody who has lost a loved one, over time, sometimes communication drops off. And if you've been kind of busy, even then, if you talked to them a week ago, just reach out and just say, hey, I'm here, if you want to catch a meal or just whatever. Just sometimes just the call and the know that you're there to support them means the world, because I've been getting a lot of support lately from a lot of people. And I can tell you sometimes just a phone call saying, hey, I'm still here, means the world to people. And you can't buy that.
No, you can't.
Yeah. So as far as everything else goes, I mean, this is a happy memory show, and we're going to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. And if I have to, I'll use the catchphrase that Kevin and I use as a safety word in the garage, which is flatulent giraffe. But other than that, I have no idea. I'm working on something here. I'm trying to. I'm literally throwing the cat litter to trying to dig myself out of this hole. Okay.
Okay.
Flatulent giraffe. Flatulent giraffe. If you start yelling that really loud in the parking lot, people look at you weird. Just so you know. But
okay, TMI here, folks.
Yeah, definitely some TMI. But again, if you want to reach out to the show, again, on the trail podcast at gmail.com, because we are going to start the new year here real soon, and we would like some more show ideas.
Oh, yeah, anything that you'd like to hear about, or even notes that, no, I'm tired of you talking about these things,
As we just said that, yes. I got to find my phone here, because Patrick Chase talked about how he shortened his, one of his, sorry, my phone is there. About how he basically thought it'd take a few minutes to talk more about his backstory on the track bar situation. So apparently he was starting off with switching to Rough Stuff's 1-ton steering setup, and then converting over to knuckle with the proper tie rod ends, reamed for over the knuckle configuration. When he also did a track bar relocation bracket to correct all the geometry, this made for shortening the track bar necessary. A poor job was done shortening it, and it failed. A friend who's a fabricator built me a new one in DOM tube, which bungs on both ends and Heim joints. I've been using two. I've since had two of them failed, and I'm sure, as you saw from the other comments, there's a mixed bag of mine are 2 years old and China. So the original one that failed has been rebuilt by using the same fabricator to a much higher quality than the one who shortened it. Originally, here's hoping that you haven't already recorded the episode so you guys can bring up this topic. Let me know if there's any more info I can provide. And he talked about how he basically threw a locator. We're going to go probably more detail on this a little later because we're doing the research on it. But that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. We always share what worked for us and what didn't, and that was the post he used. So by all means, share what didn't work for you.
Yeah, and so what he's saying is that he's got a suspension, a track bar system or a panhard bar that keeps the axle centered under the vehicle.
Right.
And one of the challenges you have with a panhard bar is that when it's installed in a considered a stock location, it's essentially horizontal.
Right.
So if the suspension goes down, the axle, because of the arc motion of that, it's tied to the frame on one side, the axle on the other. It will, if you were to go crazy and let the axle droop a long ways, it'd move in an arc, but it also goes the same way going up because you're starting flat. Like the watch hands are at 3 o'clock, and going up, they move in, going down, they move in, which makes a very predictable motion. But we go lifting our Jeeps, and our panhard bar is now at
2 o'clock, 1.5.
Well, or I was going to say 4 or 5 o'clock. Down, pointing down, and therefore, when you go up, the system goes to the one side. But if it goes down, it goes the other side. So you have two different situations, and so if you have a lot of up-down motion, your axle is moving right, left, right,
along while going up and down,
as well as going up and down, and exacerbated when your shocks begin to get worn out because they let it bounce up and down even more. And so if you don't have your geometry straight, you can really have kind of a squirrely feeling when your vehicle's bouncing. Beyond that, it can also give you squirrely feelings when you hit the brakes because your nose dives, which is the same as a suspension going up.
Yeah, it darts the vehicle.
And those are all signs of angularity on the track bar. But here's the other thing. You have 4 bars, and you've heard this from me before in other shows. You have 4 bars holding your axles front to back.
Right.
You have 1 holding it side to side. There is a lot of force on the front axle because it wants to move side to side because you're turning the wheels, making it push the Jeep to the right, push the Jeep to the left. And there's a lot of force there. And I'm not a big fan, to be honest, of Heim joints at both ends. And the reason I say that, simply put, is you are hard mounted at both ends. Heim joints do not have any cushion. That's why most of the aftermarket ones use a Heim joint at one end and a very firm but still compliant to some degree
rubber at the other end.
Rubber bushing at the other end. So some of the failure cause is the fact that you have no isolation, no absorption. So you're going to have even the micro shaking of that joint as you're driving just normally from the tread. You know, your tread is not in a straight line on an off-road tire.
No.
And so it tends to take that axle in micro increments and move it right, left, as it rolls.
Yeah, it oscillates.
It oscillates. And so that's constantly vibrating. The best way I can tell you is we're constantly bending the paper clip.
Yeah.
And you know what happens eventually to the paper clip.
Gets hot and snaps.
Exactly. So that's one of the things, if you consider it, you may want to still put the
A rubber joint.
the rubber joint. I can't think of the name of the rubber joint right now.
Vulcanized rubber bushing?
No, it has a term though, but it's okay. It'll come to me probably when I go to bed tonight.
Hey, Scott, quick record it and edit in.
Yeah.
So you'll have to use the rubber bushing inside the end. Sorry.
No. But anyway, that rubber bushing at the bottom, usually at the axle ends where they put it, because that's where the source of the hammering is coming from the axle.
Right. And
and that way it's absorbed down there at the end where it's starting, as opposed to being transferred up the rod and then being absorbed at the frame end. So anyway, that's interesting that you would have it fail. We've actually got another story about somebody who we've worked with that had a failure, and they were sending a message back to me about my Edelbrock head.
Yes, this is very interesting.
And the gentleman had been running the Edelbrock head with success, but then suddenly was having this massive loss of power.
Backfiring and all kinds of stuff.
It really was acting up. And he tore it apart, and it turns out that the rockers, where they were riding on the ends of the valves, the valve stem, had worn through. They'd literally punched through a hole.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't opening the valve completely or at all. Some were, some weren't. And he immediately wrote back that, well, be careful because the valve spring pressure was too high and it was wearing out the rocker.
Right.
And it actually, somebody Scott knows, and they had passed that back to us and to me because I run the Edelbrock head. And I started looking at the pictures that we got.
Right.
And unfortunately, I'm going to say the pictures tell a different story.
Yeah.
First off, it is a high mileage engine. What'd you say it was?
180 on the clock.
180 on the clock. And the 4-liter has hydraulic lifters.
Right.
So it really can't exert, the valve springs can't be so tight that you're going to start grinding off the tip of the rocker arm assembly just from the valve spring pressure. Now, if the valve spring pressure was too high, you could collapse and fail the lifters.
Right.
Okay. Blow out their seals, other things like that. I can see wearing the tip of a lifter if you had solid tappet followers on the cam.
Right.
But we don't. And then I started looking back closer at the pictures, and the oil ports at the top of every rocker that I saw in that picture. Now, granted, it's not 100%.
Yeah.
There were only 4 pictures, and there's 6 cylinders. But each one of them was plug solid with caked burnt oil, which is not unusual in high mileage engine. And I asked Scott, I said, did anybody check the actual push rods?
To which I replied, I'm like, you mean the oil goes through those?
And yes, the oil for the upper end is pumped up the push rods of each of the valves. So you have 12 push rods, 6-cylinder engine, exhausting. That oil is being pumped up. The lifter, as it strokes, sends oil up the push rod, and it comes up to the top at the rocker head and sprays out a little hole at the back of the rocker. It's called the heel of the rocker, where the push rod hits.
Right.
And then that does two things. One, it hits the top of the valve covers and kind of cascades over things, but also it pools in the rocker itself. And as the rocker flips back and forth high speed, you can imagine that you've just got an absolute maelstrom of oil spray everywhere up there, which for rotating equipment's a really good storm.
Yes.
And if that storm gets interrupted and the tip runs dry, then even factory valve springs will
premature wear.
Premature wear.
Even at 180,000 miles, that's not premature.
No, and in my case, I was personally aware of that when I put my Edelbrock head on. There was a little bulletin in the head on assembly to ensure that all of your oil passages were clear and flowing. And I found that of my dozen push rods, at least half of them were blocked, either partially or completely with carburized oil. Because, funny thing is the push rods start down in the cam gallery on the lifters and goes up right through the head into the overhead rockers. So they're exposed to some pretty high temperatures right in there. And so you get coking and burning in the middle of the rod. And so while I had mine out, I sat there and going, well, wait a minute, let me see if I can blow air through them. Ooh, nothing comes out the other end of these. There's little, small holes at the end. And I would shoot carb cleaner down through them and blow them until they ran completely free and cleaned them all out. And so far, knock on wood, yes, I don't have any issues with upper end oiling. But that kind of tip wear is more a subject of lack of lubrication than it is excessive pressure. Now, he is going to a roller rocker system. Hopefully that means he's going to also have to put new adjustable or new push rods in, pass along to him to please double check his push rods that they are clear and that they will flow. And push rods are not that expensive, as it goes. When I had two of them bent because of other stories told with that head, somebody put their body in the wrong spot and lifters didn't get seated the way they were supposed to. And no, it wasn't me, nor Scott, but anyway, I bought two new ones, and I think the whole set of arms, hold down push rods was $20.
Yeah,
$24.
You can't beat that.
And so it was like no big deal to fix. But if you're working on an engine that deep, folks, it takes very little time. Check out the push rods and make sure that they are fully open from one end to the other. You should be able to stare in this little hole. Now, it is a little tiny hole. It's like 1/16 of an inch or something like that.
Yeah.
But you should kind of hold it up to the sky and look, and you should see light through that hole. And if you don't, clean it or replace it. So those are another ones where we do appreciate listeners passing along what did not work for them as well, because there's a message for you.
Well, speaking of...
Yes, we have
studio audience
of the four-legged fur-bearing kind.
Speaking of what didn't work for us, you want to take a tippy tire in the garage, or you got
not yet?
Covered?
Let's share a couple more of what didn't work for us.
Okay.
In a segment that we only do occasionally, folks, because we have to wait on others, and it is tips from the garage.
Yes.
Or tips from the shop. I'm sorry, tips from the shop. So it's not my tip. These are tips provided to us, this time again, from our number one contributor of tips, and that's Ron Davis at Red Scorpion Fab Works. And I will give him also a big old shout out that he has opened his new shop in Tennessee, not far from
near
Winrock, yeah. And if you look him up online at Red Scorpion Fab Works, he's got the addresses on there and contact. So if you break yourself up in Tennessee, you've got a place to go to now.
Yeah.
But he's also got a shop down here in Brandon, and they're talking now about something outside of Lakeland. So way to go, Ron. But Ron shares another one. He was the one that brought us the little tip on don't put your brake pads on backets. And make sure that rotation doesn't lift your pads off if you break a bolt.
And clean your Jeep when you take it in for being repairing.
Right. But this one's a little more
concerning.
because it relates to the first one. And that one, folks, was when you look at brake pads on most models of Jeeps. I haven't looked at the JT, but the pads come with two tangs on one side of the pad and one tang on the other as far as the way it mounts into the little frame. And you always want the two tangs down and the single tang up. It will fit the other way. It'll be on the wrong side of the Jeep and upside down. And the problem is if the caliper bolt ever breaks, the rotation of the wheel will actually lift the pad away without that two-tanger holding it anchored at the bottom, and it'll swing out and go into your rim while you're driving, and at the very least you'll come to an abrupt stop. At the worst, your rim will shatter and you will be out of control. So it's not a cool thing to do. Why does that relate to the new one? Well, he's seen a new level of
concern.
The ability for humans to misunderstand is immense.
And instructions.
Yes, and not read instructions. What he is finding, first off, folks, if you do brakes and you get a new caliper, or if you get an overhaul kit, or if you get replacement brake lines, you will receive what look like solid copper washers. And they're kind of thin washers. You know, they're not normal wide washers, but they look like washers. And what they are is they're actually gaskets. They are not washers. They go between the banjo fitting of the brake hose and the caliper block itself. One between the banjo and the caliper, and the other between the banjo bolt, which is a special bolt that goes for that fitting. It's drilled through the middle and cross-drilled to allow brake fluid to flow through it. So you put that on the bolt first. So it's like a washer on that bolt. You put the bolt and washer combo through the banjo. Then you put another one on the other side, and then you thread that into the caliper, which is essentially the nut. And you tighten that down, like the spec tells you, to a certain foot poundage, and check for leaks when the thing is assembled. And if it weeps, you tighten it a little more. Those are not washers. They are gaskets. They're metal gaskets. He is finding them repeatedly used as washers under the caliper mounting bolts.
No.
Folks, no, absolutely not. They will compress and they will loosen, and your caliper bolts will come out. And if you went ahead and put your pads on upside down, you're going to find out about instant wheel stoppage.
Yes.
So please, if you think they're pretty copper washers, no. They are not. They are gaskets. They go on the brake lines. Please put them on the brake lines on the banjo bolt, one under the bolt head and one between the banjo fitting and the brake caliper. Look at the diagrams. They'll tell you where they go. But by all means, Chrysler, Jeep, whatever you want to call them, they use a washerless mounting bolt. They're all what they call flanged bolts for holding the caliper assembly onto the caliper frame.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes they're 12 millimeter head. Sometimes they're 8 millimeter head. But
varies.
all of them are, a flanged bolt. And in a pinch, yes, you can use a non-standard bolt in there with a washer, but it's not a good long-term solution.
Yeah, it's like a trail repair.
It's a trail repair, get you home. But you want to get the proper bolts because those are made to not back out.
Right.
Okay. As soon as you introduce a washer, there's a chance that the head can move easier than it can if the forged in washer shape is bearing against the clamping surface. And I know that's kind of technical, but just use the right bolts.
Yeah, just use the right bolt.
They're readily available. You can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them at parts stores. They are considered consumable. So, if you've done brakes a couple times on your old YJ or
Time to do 'em.
TJ, just get some new ones.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have new hardware because, again, it makes disassemble later on down easier. You're not trying to do it with the same bolts over and over again.
And you want to keep your brakes on your vehicle. It's a little easier to stop if they're not dragging behind you on their hoses.
Yeah.
So anyway, and let's see, was there anything else from
The
Ron?
shocks.
This was actually from Shane.
Yes.
This is not a shop that I would have normally expected a suggestion from, but this came from Shane, the owner of the Specialty Drive Shaft locally and Gulf Coast Drive Shaft on the lines, interwebs. And Shane pointed out something interesting. And if you have shocks in a kit, okay, look at the instructions of the kits. You catching a theme here, folks? not all shocks can be mounted universally upside down, right side up.
Right.
Okay. There are 3 basic styles of shock, and actually it's 2 with the third being an option in either case.
Yeah.
One is a monotube shock. It's probably the most commonly given nowadays, and it's a single steel tube with the oil in it and the gas. And though, you can either have it high pressure gas or non-gas, or external gas reservoir or non-external kind of thing.
It varies.
The other one is a twin tube, or double tube as it's often advertised. And that's where you have an inner tube that has the oil in the piston, and then an outer tube that holds the pressurized gas or some kind of anti-foaming agent.
Right.
Those cannot be mounted upside down. Twin tubes, their function, use gravity to keep the oil. And if you turn them upside down, the oil runs into the gas space and the gas runs into the oil space. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule, but there's a major brand out there that uses a twin tube shock. It's a good brand. It's a good shock. But if you mount them upside down, they don't shock
work
anymore. And you end up riding around on
the springs.
Yeah, basically on a marshmallow. Just kind of bouncing along the road. You hit railroad tracks and you almost lose control because there's no compression or rebound dampening at all, because the piston is now running in a nitrogen atmosphere. There's technically a little dampening there, but
there's no resistance.
It's very, very minor.
It's like the Borg, resistance is future.
So how do you know the difference? Well, first off, you read the instructions that came with the shock. But regardless, there's a couple of clues. If the shock came as a simple shaft shock, in other words, no boots, no accordion sleeves, nothing, it probably is a single tube, and it probably can go both ways. If it came with a corrugated accordion boot, okay, either pre-mounted or for you to add, it's probably a monotube shock and doesn't really care, all right?
Right.
If it came with a housing or shroud covering the shaft, okay, it's probably a twin tube shock.
Yep.
All right. It's usually, and those, there's 2 reasons you don't mount them upside down. 1, obviously the shock will not work.
Yeah.
2, that housing will fill with water.
Yes.
And rot the heck out of your expensive shaft, that's running up and down in the shock. And they are out there. Everybody says, oh, nobody makes those anymore. Yeah, they are. There are a lot of the primary manufacturers that make them out there. Monroe still makes a whole series that come with the steel shroud. Gabriel makes a bunch of them. In the off-road line, there's the red one with the black.
The Rocksport?
Rocksport makes a series in them. They're all great shocks. I'm not saying they're not, but install them per the instructions for them to work the way they're supposed to. Don't put them in upside down. And Shane had that happen to him personally on his vehicle. Had a shop put them on, and the shop was, well, they're all dual location. It fits better this way. Well, and his JT just didn't handle.
Yeah, they almost didn't like it anymore.
Yeah, they were considering trading it in, thinking it was a suspension issue. And he called me up and we talked about it. He flipped them over. And the thing is, once you flip them over, they're not going to work immediately, because you have to actually work the gas back into the correct side and the oil into the correct side. So it's not a death sentence, but he said after the first one, he took the second one and went over to the bench, and he's just kind of started pushing it up and down with the reservoir on the bottom. And he said about the 3rd or 4th time, it was going shink, 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 shink. Oh God, it got stiff really quick. And then you still have to, it has to kind of go through a settling time where the gas doesn't foam up into the oil kind of thing, and you get it all on the right side. But now he says it's like a different truck.
Yeah.
So again, do pay attention. The shocks may be universal fit. If so, they usually advertise it because they think it's a great sales pitch.
Right.
But they may not be. So thanks to both Ron and Red Scorpion Fabworks and Shane at Specialty Drive Shafts / Gulf Coast Drive Shafts, and for their willingness to share some hey, here's some stupid human tricks that we're running into.
Well, and that's the thing too. When Kevin and I talk about talking with the manufacturers and getting that information up front, Because information should be flowing freely.
Mm-hmm.
And those are questions you need to ask when you order your lift kit or you order a set of shocks. Hey, are these monotube? Are they twin tube? Ask that question.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
It does not hurt. And it's one of the simple facts of automotive engineering. Shocks can make or break a suspension system.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy shocks that fit, but that are incorrectly tuned. If, for example, you tried to put JL shocks on a JT, they'd probably bolt on, but they wouldn't ride right because there's a totally different weight bias between the truck and the SUV.
Mm-hmm.
And shocks that are good for the truck would probably be
Too aggressive for the
too aggressive for the JL. But, and vice versa, the other way, you'd probably have a Marshmallow, in the truck, particularly if it was running loaded.
like the Animaniacs, boingy, boingy, boingy.
That could be. That could be. So,
And then too much of boingy, you get hello nurse. Well, when you get in an accident.
yeah, I know.
Okay,
I'm just sitting here going with the alliteration. Complete with the Popeyes and the
Hey.
and the sister going boys. IR one.
You said Popeyes. I'm like,
I think it's time for that break.
yeah, I think it's time for a quick little break and we tip retire on into the garage. So please hold while we put your trays into upright position and land this plane. Hey Jeepers, it's Scott here. Hi, and as always, please check out the 4x4 Radio Network, all the fun stuff there. And also, if you want to become a Patreon and help the show grow, please check it out, including all of our corporate Patreons. So with that little bit of news, oh yeah, and lunch today is pizza with tater tots. And with that, we're going to go ahead and launch back ourselves into the edumacation of Kevin and Kevin's Garage.
Oh, good to have you back, sir.
It's good to be back. Because I'll be back.
Yeah, I knew that. Let's start off.
Family joke just popped in my head. I'll have to tell you after the show. It's not clean and safe for work.
Okay, that's all well and good. Right now, the garage we're going to go talk about isn't mine.
Mm-hmm.
It is out over at the backside of.
Oh yes, sorry, you my cue card.
I was trying to get his attention.
Specialty Drive Shaft or Gulf Coast.
A Gulf Coast Drive Shaft. So Shane, yes, unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon your viewpoint, the Jeep bug has
Yep.
not just bit, but I think it's burrowed in and cut off the brain and taken over.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous.
You'll get there.
Since the end of Crawling for the Fallen, we had another shop.
Which has been less than 30 days, by the way.
Yes, it has. Who was helping out a client of theirs who had a Jeep that seemed to be unfixable.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 97 Jeep TJ in the, I forget the green, but it's
It's a forest green.
no, it's actually the pearlescent.
Emerald green?
Emerald green. That's right. The emerald green with pearl coat. Pretty TJ. Unmolested.
Yeah. With the factory Wagner sealed beams.
Yeah, still has the glass headlights on the factory. That plaid greenish tan interior seat
Doesn't
covering.
even have the Life is Good sticker on it.
No, it's really pretty awesome. And it was a young man that had it. Now, this Jeep does have been visited by the
Ghost
Rust
of
Monster.
Christmas Rust.
Yes, Ghost of Christmas Rust. And it needs some frame repair. And the body, though, well, they've hidden most of it with some little
The
bits
usual
of
stuff.
body armor down the rock rails. It's the only place that's really showing up a little bit on the hood. But otherwise, it's really clean and clean looking.
Mm-hmm.
No mods, no lifts, no hack jobs.
Completely stuck.
And but the guy, nobody wanted to get it running for him, and it had just quit on this gentleman, and he was kind of disappointed, and he just had gone through some life changes of his own and really had no place to keep it. So he said, well, let me just sell it. And this other shop agreed to sell it for him, to just put him out on the interwebs.
Yeah.
And long story short, Shane contacted the guy thinking, well, it's going to be gone at the price he listed. Notice I'm not telling you the price he listed at this point.
We want to keep friends.
And well, no, I'm going to share it eventually, but because Shane figured there's no way I'm going to have gotten to this thing, but he really was the first person to call. And so he paid a whopping $1,500 for a 97 TJ,
6-cylinder.
6-cylinder automatic. Really, the only mod that it's had that was serious was somebody replaced the radio with an aftermarket unit,
Yeah.
but didn't cut the dash to do it. So, and yes, there's some rust. Not going to kid you, but folks, I don't know about your neck of the woods.
It's from Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's from Massachusetts, but still, in my neck of the woods, even a parts Jeep is worth more than $1,500.
The engine alone.
Yeah, the engine alone. So he gives me a call and says, "Hey, you want to come up and look at my latest acquisition?" And
New
oh, by the
member of
way,
family.
bring your electrical tools.
Gotta love a conversation start like that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm one of those guys who says, "I'll be there in minutes."
Yeah.
I love a challenge. It had been through several shops and nobody could figure out how to get it running. And this is one of those techie thingies where I sit there and go, let me take a look at my wiring diagrams. Okay, 97. All right, so let's see what it's doing. Well, you turn the key on, the dash lights up. You can Google listen to me. You can scan the computer. It cranks, but it just will not start. It will not fire. It won't do anything. So I said, okie dokie. Well, let's start off the easy thing with that antiquated tool that nobody seems to know how to use if they're anything younger than 50.
Your brain?
No, a timing light. Ooh, an inductive timing light. Rare tool, dirt cheap, Sears model. Clips on the battery, clips on the spark plug wire, and flashes when the plug fires without shocking you.
Yeah.
Novel. No light. No light on any plug. No light on the coil. Okay, we have no ignition. All right, well, let's not quit just yet. Grab a little box of parts. This was maybe $79 for the whole set. Noid lights. And no, it's not the pizza guy, okay, from Domino's.
Avoid.
It's the little Noid lights plug in place of at least one of the fuel injectors. They come in different wiring pinouts so that you can plug them into all different harnesses. And then you crank the engine. And if the injector's being told by the computer to fire, you get a little blinking light.
Right.
No light.
Okay, we don't have fuel or fire.
Correct. We got air. I can feel that.
Right.
So, now those of you that play in the wiring of Jeeps, I hope went straight to the same place that I did. There is a spot. Okay, I can chase the wiring system for the ignition. I can chase the wiring system for the fuel injectors. But there's only one place that they cross. And they're both dead. And supposedly he was driving and it just died. And there's a specific spot in most Chrysler vehicles, but specifically in the Jeeps, where those things come together and are they are actually powered from the same spot. It's called a relay in the fuse box under the hood, also called the power distribution unit. That's called the ASD. Now, colloquially, it's all systems disable. I forget what its actual term. It's something similar.
Right.
But
all systems dead.
well, close. But so I'm sitting there going, let me just start there. Is this relay working? So I break out, I have a little tool that you plug in place of the relay and then plug the relay on top of it. So it looks like the leaning tower of relay out of the box, but it gives you little touch points. And I'm going, do I have power to the relay? Yes, I do. Okay. Do I have trigger to the relay when we turn the key on? Well, I think so, but the meter just went boop.
Okay.
Barely flickered. Do it again. Boop. Barely flickered. All right. So maybe I have a problem between the relay and the computer.
Right.
It's only 8 inches. I'm looking at the wires between the two of them, and I don't see anything hacked up or destroyed. All right. Well, that's fine. Let me try to force the issue. So I take my power probe and go to my little thing, and I go, can I click the relay? All right, let me click the relay. It's on. Crank it. Nothing ran. Interesting. I don't think the problem's in the relay. And I kind of start going, okay, there's a splice where that ASD relay output goes to all kinds of things. I'm forcing the relay. I know I've got power to the relay,
Right.
but I'm not getting power out of the relay. Or at least it doesn't show me power. So then I hook up the backside of the relay, okay, to a meter. And then I force the relay. Oh, the relay is putting out power when it's clicked.
Okay.
All right.
You're doing the tree of knowledge.
I am. I'm working my way down the wires, what I'm doing.
Right.
Okay, my relay is working. I don't know if it's getting signal, but I know it's working. But you know what? That splice is right here under the fuse box. So let's just take a look.
Yep.
They come out without, well, technically a screwdriver to push the tabs out of the way, but that's about it. And we lifted up the relay, the power distribution box. It's that long cigar shaped for those of you who have the TJs. And we see it. We see a wad of electrical tape.
Oh, gosh.
It's probably about 3 inches long, and it's probably 3/4 of an inch in diameter wad of electrical tape. And more importantly, where the wire went incorrectly routed across the steel frame that holds the box,
Oh, no.
we see a glint of copper. Shiny copper.
Candy-like copper.
Yeah. I'm going, not calling that a smoking gun,
But
there's a
Houston?
gun and there's smoke.
That's the Houston.
Yeah. So it's like, well, let's go a little further and kind of open this up a little bit. And so I start trying to carve into gummy old electrical
You do a
tape.
biopsy.
And when I'm doing a biopsy, I didn't even pull the wire. I just did the biopsy and it fell. And I'm like,
Then you did a Jamie Heineman. There's your problem.
pretty close to it. I'm looking at the end I'm holding and it's straight. It's corroded slightly, discolored, more of a chocolate rather than copper.
Right.
There's not even a twist in it. I'm going, well, how the heck? What? And so I'm keep digging. And then I find another one about 1.5 inches, 2 inches down from that one. And I realize this is all the same wire.
Yeah.
It's all the same color, the same gauge, but it's not been broken and cut once, but twice. And then somebody twisted it together, and somebody thought they were soldering it because there was a ball of solder on the tip of each tip of one side of what was twisted, except that it wasn't twisted. It was just wrapped around the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was loaded up with about 600 turns of electrical tape. Cheap too, I'd tell you, not good 3M stuff, because it turned into gumball under there. And at that point, I'm running out of time because I had to go to a certain event. And
Yeah.
so I was like, Shane, I'm not going to tell you it's going to start, but I'm going to put my odds at better than 2 to 1 that you reconnect those two wires and turn the key in. It's probably going to fire off. Long story short, I won't go through it. He did it. He couldn't wait. He was going nuts. So he didn't wait for me. He did make up a little jumper cable and put it on there with some wire nuts. Admittedly, he did not close it up. He didn't try to make that the fix because you don't use wire nuts on a vehicle, folks.
Yeah.
But it's good enough for a field test. And he said, yep, got in there, shoved the key in, cranked it over, and it went boom. And total diagnosis time was 25 minutes. It had been to 4 prior shops from what I'd heard from the story. They had all written it off as unfixable. One of the shops had even gone so far as to order a computer and put a new computer in it to see if that would fix it, and it didn't. Fortunately, the computer was able to be returned, and the old computer was put back in. And 20 minutes of diagnosis, we had the engine running.
Sweet.
But the story doesn't end there.
Nope.
So I go back over there the other day.
To Billy Mays. But wait, there's more.
More, yes. I take, he was here from Tampa. Do you know
Really?
that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Anyway, we went back over. I took my Box O Jeep wiring parts, as we've mentioned before that I've salvaged Jeep parts. And lo and behold, one whole side of one bin is 97 Jeep parts. And in there is a 97 Jeep PDU box. And
That's when you kind of did all the salvaging and you took everything, each
Right.
individual piece.
each individual piece, separated them out and bagged and tagged them. And what I pulled from that was the cable that was the output cable from that relay, from the all systems is stable relay. I pulled the cover plate. There's a snap. The yellow cover you see when you open the box is actually a lock cover, and you go underneath and you squeeze 2 tabs, and that comes up and off, and then you can reach in there and unlock and pull the pin out. Or it's actually a little connector head, and got that out of the salvage one, and then went over to his, which was way too short now because of missing pieces, and put the new one in, and then went down and removed the cruddy wire till I got clean wire, and this new piece was long enough, and we did a proper splice with marine grade crimps and marine grade adhesive lined shrink tube on it, and then reloomed everything correctly so that it came out the opening that they designed into the box, so it wouldn't be rubbing against everything. Fired up, and it ran, which we knew it would. Now, however, it did not run well.
No.
It ran.
It had a cough.
It didn't want to idle.
Right.
But as soon as you put a little throttle into it, boy, she just lit up and ran like a scalded rabbit. But she just didn't want to idle, and it kept burbling and bouncing and whatnot. But the nice thing is, folks, now we move on to several other stages. I was able to do a little backwoods diagnostic and said, it's not recovering, when it throttles down. You'd run, but as soon as you close off the throttle, it would continue to drop. Sometimes it'd catch it, but most of the times it would stall. And I'm going, do it again, start it up, rev it up, and I put my hands on the idle air control motor. This is a known Jeep wear part. This was original idle air from 97 with 160,000 miles, and I'm going, that hasn't been changed. And I can feel it occasionally trying to move. It's just an electric motor, little tiny, like ones that we used to have in slot cars. You can always feel them go, zzz, and this one didn't do anything. It would go, so I was like, let's check this. So we took it off, and it carboned up really, really bad. But actually, before that, I did my little redneck test. I pulled off, I used the PCV valve. I pulled that off of its plug. You start it up, and the engine went, because it had all kinds of idle air now.
Right.
So I put my finger over it to shut it down. And the idle air motor could not recover. It would not catch it. It would just go stall. But if I played idle air motor and just moved my finger partway across the opening, slowly closing the air off, the idle would come down. I could hold my finger in a position. I had a beautiful, 600 RPM idle. No hiccups, no bangs, just happy as can be.
Where it needed to be.
So I'm like, okay, we need an idle air motor. There's no question about that. So we put an idle air motor in it, and we fired it up, and initially it ran fantastic. But then it started breaking up, but it wouldn't stall this time.
Right.
Okay, so this is the step-by-step that we went through. It also finally threw a code, and it tells me this generic, it's actually a very Jeep-specific code, but it talks about either cam or crank sensor is providing erratic information. Okay? This is the Gen 1 OBD1 system.
Yeah.
Not real smart folks.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to go, okay, that's pointing me in a couple of directions, but we're going to go for one. So we walked over. What's the easiest one to reach? Well, that frickin' crank position sensor is jammed on the back of the bell housing, back in valve cover leak central.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the cam position sensor.
Yeah,
on the 97, it looks like a distributor, but it's got no points in it. And it's just got a big tuna can with half the wall cut away, and it slides between this sensor and receiver so that it gets one big pulse every revolution of the can. Mm-hmm. We are talking about early electronics here. It's very insensitive.
It's literally like the Model T almost.
It is. And it looked fine at first until I tried to get to that sensor. Now, normally when you take the rotor cap off and you pull the rotor out, there's a plastic disc, and you can see 3 wires going into it, kind of flat wires going into the edge of this, and you just lift it off.
Right.
It was going, Okay, I could lift it on this corner and start working around it. So I start putting pressure on the plastic, with a screwdriver, slid it in there and start working it out. It goes so far and go, you ain't moving. I'm on a crack. If you move me any further, I'm going to break.
Right.
I'm going, that is not cool. Well, I also then noticed what was bothering me, and the hindbrain had been going, hey,
Hello.
Hello.
McFly.
You're paying attention to him, but hey, I see something worse. The rotor shaft that comes up, what would have been the distributor's main shaft up the middle in the earlier versions, is wiggling over 1/8 of an inch side to side.
That's not good.
I'm going, I don't think there's that much clearance on the sensor. I have a feeling that's why the sensor doesn't want to come out. It's probably been hammered into the side of the...
It's reached its served its life.
And Shane says, well, I have a new sensor coming. I says, well, all we'd be doing is condemning it to a quick death by bludgeoning. So he says, well, I remember reading online that somebody said, don't buy a sensor. You can buy the whole distributor ready to go for only $20 more. So we Google online. We just been out for a parts run on the idle air sensor, and AutoZone had one of those in stock.
Well, hold on. It's not a proper Jeep job unless you go to the parts store 3 times.
We'll get there. And lo and behold, our local Napa. Now, 2 for 2. I'm going Jeep parts that I don't have to wait for. I'm right hearing angels singing at this point. Something's wrong here. And so we run down there, and sure enough, did you know that the distributor unit, the cam position sensor, is actually less than the idle air motor? The idle air motor was like $60. This was only $52. Yeah, okay. But the interesting thing was for $52, but the core charge was 80 something.
Oh yeah,
they want that one back, even as bad as it was. It's like, okay, we'll send it back to you.
We'll bring you the carcass.
So we get in there and we drop it in there, and it's easy. It's not a timing issue. It's only got a single position. You just get it so that the rotors face the right way, and on the oil pump the right way. There's only one bolt hole. There's no slot. So you're in. Take a deep breath, fire it up, and she revs to life, and still has got the shakes. And the intermittence, and it's less than before though. Okay,
you're getting there.
It's getting there. It's almost, but it's still just not. But it's not threatening to stall. It's just idling like crap.
Right.
And I was like, well, and it re-threw the same code. And I'm going, okay, that code. When you read the manual, it goes 2 ways. Okay, so I'm looking down, going, okay, we got to go down to that crank position sensor.
Yeah, you can't put it off now.
Okay, it's only 1 bolt.
Yeah,
is it going to come off?
Contortionist to get to it.
Yeah, and of course we've run the engine enough in testing that it's not warm down there.
Yeah.
Well, long story short, we get it off without getting too many burns. We have another one. We didn't have to go out for this one. The Jeep came with one. Should have been my first clue. Why did the guy have a spare crank position sensor?
Because he understood that he had a Jeep.
Yeah. So we put it in there, and I said, Change, okay, when you set these, don't push it all the way down. It's a slot, not a single bolt hole. And he says, well, the other one was loose. I said, uh-oh. Rut-row. Okay. I hope it's just that the guy didn't know what he was doing. So let's take it out. And I looked at the old one, and sure enough, you could see strike marks on the face. It didn't break the case. Usually when they slide all the way down, guys, it's either on the ring gears where it's reading from. There's a slotted section on the ring gear, whether it's on the flywheel of a manual or it's on the flex plate of the automatic. There's a multi-slot. I think it's got 6 slots or 5 slots and 1 missing or something like that, or maybe 5 bumps and whatever to give it the crank position. And so you could see the witness marks where it had been being kissed by the unit, and that will mess up a Hall effect sensor's output really bad. They're not designed to take impacts.
Right.
You're supposed to get them close enough that they can feel the wind go by but not touch. So he's like, well, what do we do? I said, you put this one down, slide it down. Is it touching? Is it bottoming out? He says, yeah. Oh, this is the new one. I said, fine. Bottom it out and then stick a screwdriver underneath it after you snug the nut up and bring it up. Let's go up 1/8 of an inch. Let's start at trying 1/8 of an inch, about the width of a screwdriver blade flat.
Right.
And it says, okay, and snug it good so it doesn't move, but don't crack the plastic. Don't you love instructions like that?
Exactly.
Yeah. What is good without cracking plastic? The only way to find out is to do one where you crack the plastic.
You got Meat Paw McGee over here.
No. So we do that. We put it together, and I have no idea. He says, well, how do you know? I said, well, if we get the same message, we got to go up. If it doesn't fire at all, we got to go down. Oh, okay. I said, this is a guessing game, folks. Short of taking and getting in there with a feeler gauge, and that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to measure, the opening depth and blah, 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 blah. But let's just see what happens. And believe it or not, after the third replacement part and some calibration, we turned the key, and it was anticlimactic.
Nice.
I was like, oh, okie dokie, Smokey.
So it's exactly a screwdriver.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, at least on that one, it's about a screwdriver blade width up. It gives you the right sense. And honestly, please don't take that as a reference, because I have never gotten it in one try before.
You could have gone just as bad the other way.
Yeah, you really can. And the manual, which I didn't have with me, shame on me, has a procedure for setting that height. Didn't have it. But in this case, I have done enough cam position sensors on the early ones to know that closer is better, but hitting is not.
Yeah.
They've since put it back together. Shane was also replacing, the front U-joints in the axle shafts were...
Oh, you mean the front dust holders?
Yeah. Out of the 8 caps at the ends of the front axle, 2 of them had something resembling the residue of grease. One of them was so dry and so abused.
They were rusted in place.
Yeah, they were actually half bearings rusted in place to the cap. And since Shane runs a drive shaft shop, he had the tools and everything with which to, repair that. Even he was cussing a little bit getting C-clips that had been in since 1997.
Yeah.
They were fused. One of them came apart with the torch. But unlike most shops, he actually takes the heads over to the blast cabinet and sandblasts everything out, cleans it up, and puts it back together. They look new. And they took it out for a drive. And yeah, there's some ticking. He thinks, well, since the axle shafts were that bad, he says, I have a feeling my drive shafts are probably
just as bad.
And I said, yeah, but at least you know a drive shaft guy that can fix them. He says, yeah, actually I do. But it was kind of fun to take this vehicle from not running, in 20 minutes have it running, and then I'm going to say 4 hours of diagnosis and tail chasing to have it running well.
Yes.
Exceedingly well. Codes, no codes, no issues. To look at the data stream as it's running, and having it before, the timing was swinging violently from 5 degrees advanced to 24 degrees advanced, back to 5 degrees advanced, back to 17, all over the place. Fuel trim plus 20,
Yeah, you were saying you could smell the unburned
you could
fuel.
smell the gasoline out the thing. To now, I'm sitting there watching at a fixed idle time of 17 degrees.
Nice.
Not creeping, and the fuel trim at -3%, and the O2 sensors reading a normal voltage rate, not going up, down.
Yeah, being flow with fuel.
Yeah, and the engine just seeming to be as happy as could be. It's like, I can run again, And so we will move on, and there will be future shop discussions, because it does have a rusted frame. There is a bad spot on the driver's side rear heel, which is right where the upper driver's side control arm mounts. It's pretty broke through in many, many, many places. We'll probably go with something like a safety cap repair part there, and a few other spots that need it. And like I said, the body is beautiful looking, but when you get underneath it, there's some crumblies. And he's going to deal with that, because, where else do you get $1,500 TJ that would have a perfect body?
Yeah.
So far, and we don't normally talk costs in this, but I will tell you kind of grinningly, so far his $15 investment has gone all the way up to $1,750.
Yeah.
And he has a driving, rolling TJ at $1,750. And I'm going, okay, so...
Now, before you think you bought the Jeep for $17.50,
No.
that's $1,700.
$1,700, yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm speaking shorthand.
That's okay. I speak that all the time.
So it's kind of neat. And I love those kinds of projects, I kind of love it when somebody goes, well, that can't be fixed. Oh, really?
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. And the funniest thing was, to get it running was about, now that additional $250, That was mostly in the axle wheel bearings and the U-joints,
Yeah.
not in the wiring.
Nope.
The wiring was nothing. It was out of my scrap bin. And then the distributor and the idle air control motors were about 110 combined.
Right.
And we had the crank position sensor from what the guy had given us. So
Yeah.
the electronics side was about $110.
Yeah. So that's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
I spent 128 for all my water pump stuff.
Yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. And what I'm getting there for each of you listening, particularly because we keep getting comments about you guys liking this tech stuff, so I hope you're still liking it, is you can do this. All right? The secret isn't fancy tools. Yes, I have a Noid light. Yes, I have but it's having the service manual for your Jeep. And I know that up through 06, they're available for free online right now. You can Google them and find them from various places. WranglerFix.com is an awesome one. They keep a library of them up there, and you can join. And if you drive a Wrangler, it's probably not a bad website to join.
Yeah.
And because a lot of guys do a lot of heavy tech on that website.
WranglerFix.com or
I'm sorry. Yeah, listen to me.
Wrangler Forums.
WranglerForum.com.
Gotcha.
And they've been fantastic there as far as sharing information. So, that's just one of those sites. But if you have that manual and you go to section 8W, and I can guarantee you that's across almost every Jeep manual ever produced. 8W is the wiring section. Take the time to go ahead and learn how to read it. It's not hard. It does, and they give you a whole half a chapter in the beginning on how to read this manual.
Yeah.
Which most textbooks don't tell you how to read the textbook. This one does, and it's full of really useful things like everything from where the wires are supposed to be. That wiring harness, that spaghetti nest that's under your Jeep. Where is it supposed to hang? It shows you where it's supposed to hang. It shows you where the splices are, where the grounds are. We always talk about powers and grounds.
Yep.
Well, where's the ground? You can find it. They're all labeled. And then it has single line wiring diagrams that show you every wire, where it goes, what the color code is, what the gauge of the wire is. So you kind of have everything you need to solve the problem other than your brain going, okay, this switch goes to here. So you sit there and you see that the ASD relay, the output of that is a green with orange stripe. Gee, look at that. My green with orange stripe is in 3 pieces. Maybe I should fix that.
You made a comment about how it wasn't throwing a check engine light, how people get hung up on using code scanners because technically the idle air control motor was working, but it was stripped out.
Right. So to the computer, it was saying spin in. And then the motor was spinning in. And the sensor that's built into the motor was reporting, I'm spun in. Now, the probe at the end that blocks or opens the air passage wasn't moving.
Yeah.
But the computer didn't know that. So it never threw an IAC code. Yeah. And that's one of those things that a good tech person, whether it's a paid tech or yourself, has to understand is that there is a break between the electronics world and the physical world. And somewhere that transition break, if the error is happening on the physical side, but the electrical side is still functioning, the computer's not going to know about it.
Right.
All it's going to know is it's not running right. I'm not happy.
And it doesn't have a code for I'm not happy. It's not running right.
No, you just sit there with an engine that's shaking like a wet dog.
Well, and you talked about how an engine needs fuel, fire, and air.
Yeah, which is basically you've got to have spark. You've got to have fuel, and you got to have air. And then the little secret sauce is timing all the pieces in the right situation. And that's why the engine uses the crank and the cam position. So it knows, okay, these valves are opening when they're supposed to be. But here's the funny thing. It's reading that off of what was the distributor. All the way up through your or my Jeeps, okay, through 06. It reads the cam timing from the old distributor hole.
Yep.
All right. And yes, that's turning off a gear set from the cam, but it's assuming as long as it's receiving a half speed signal that the cam is turning correctly. If your cam gear has jumped a time tooth, it's still turning, isn't it? And it may not generate the right thing. What you may get is an ignition knock noise. and a cam on a detonation, or what they call it, cylinder misfire.
Right.
So wait a minute, I have a cylinder misfire, so it can't be the cam because my cam signal is not giving an error. Not true.
Right.
Okay, so this is where the understanding comes in. As Scott said, the idle air motor is a classic one. Is that one will bite people in the butt all the time. Well, I'm not getting code on it. It's got to be fine. Not necessarily. You have an electric motor that the little shaft coming out of the end is a screw shape.
Mm-hmm.
And the plunger has a screw hole with a spring behind it. So if the motor turns and spins to the right, the little plunger pulls back, letting more air in. Okay. If it needs to cut off the air because the engine's over revving, the motor turns the other way, and that plunger moves out from the body of the controller
and restricts the
air. If that little shaft, which is a steel shaft and aluminum plunger, and the plunger gets full of white snotty corrosion, it'll move a little bit till the corrosion pushes out of the way, and then it suddenly stops moving. And guess what? The motor still says, "Hey, I've turned 5 turns." And the computer goes, "Okay, you're fine."
It's someone else's problem.
And meanwhile, the little plunger's sitting there going, "I didn't move."
But there's no sensor on that.
Yeah. So these are just some of those little nuances in that you, as the human doing the research, checking the bits and pieces, you have to validate that, okay, the computer thinks it moved the air sensor. Did it?
You're the supplemental ECM.
Yeah, you really are. And the same sort of thing with a throttle position sensor. Okay? It may see the current. It's simply a potentiometer, better known as a variable resistor, the same thing you do on the volume knob on the old radios that actually had a knob, not a plus or minus button. All right? It's a little carbon track in there. And the funny thing is there's 3 connections. Power in, power out, and then the wiper. Okay.
Right.
Now, if the wiper loses contact, well, it loses contact normally on the resistor if you go all the way to the minimum setting. So the computer only knows if the throttle position sensor is alive by the fact that it checks the voltage in, voltage out.
Right.
The wiper is the output. So all it knows is if the engine won't rev, sometimes that thing is shot. And therefore, when you open the throttle, the engine dies because the engine doesn't know that you open the throttle.
Yeah.
And you basically lean out the engine by adding more air until it quits.
Mm-hmm.
So throttle position sensors, now if the carbon track breaks, you'll get a throttle position sensor error because voltage in and nothing's coming out, any lead. Therefore, it knows it's dead. And it'll tell you it's dead.
Right.
So this is where you have to put your noggin to use and look at the diagram. Fortunately, you don't have to know a lot about electricity to do it. You're just following a line.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of that relay. I said, okay, I got 4 tabs on the relay. 2 of them are control. 2 of them are the switch, so to speak. One is power and the other one is ground to the computer. Well, let me see if it works. I know I got power to it, so let me go over here to the ground and create an artificial ground with my power probe. And it went click. That circuit's good.
Yep.
So now, do I have power going in? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have power going out? Yes. Okay. I'm 99% sure that's functioning.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd have to get a more sensitive equipment to watch to whether or not the computer was grounding it. But I knew that I was putting power out of the relay when the computer turned on or tried, but it didn't stay on. Here's the other trick, understanding what happens. If you look at a wiring diagram, you can see that one of the outputs from the ASD goes right back to the computer on a different pin.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what I said? Computer only knows what it sees.
Yeah.
It's triggered that ASD. Remember I said that it went flick? That ASD was triggering the relay, and to its time, it waited a long time because electricity doesn't need but microseconds, milliseconds, picoseconds, to flash down a wire. And the computer goes, I don't have anything flashing down my ASD output wire. ASD isn't working. Kill it. Okay, there goes our
Studio audience
agreeing with me. So what you're looking at there is the fact that, okay, that's telling me that the ASD signal's not going anywhere. because the computer does not allow the systems to continue to operate if it's not seeing power back.
Right.
It knows there's something wrong. Now, why don't we have an ASD check engine light code? Okay. Well, actually it did. Very first time it popped a error in ASD circuit. That's all it said, which is what started us on this little thing way, way, way at the back. But it disappeared,
Right.
as we were playing around, which may have been it had partial contact and wiped it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is how your mind has to work, is you have to kind of look at the wiring diagram, and you don't see electrons, but you say, okay, if power comes on, this closes this relay. This relay powers that. I don't care about any of that. I only care about this one over here that is my coil packs, and this one over here that is my ignition, my fuel injectors. Oh, okay. Well, those both feed off the same junction. So if I don't have power down that line, theoretically, I could have gone to that cut into the wire and powered it up and probably cranked the engine. Probably would have run, but I didn't need to. When I see the broken wire that powers all that, it's kind of
that's a
smoking gun. So anyway, that's just a little thought process, and I realize it may be a little disjointed.
But the information,
but the information is there, and wiring is not the nightmare people think it is. It's not sitting there in front of a computer screen. It is understanding what the vehicle is trying to do and why. Some of that you kind of have to learn, but some of it's just a matter of reading the service manual. They do a heck of a write-up in those things. It's overwhelming because people take it in big bites.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate. I'm kind of working at it for the last, good Lord, 20 years. And you start to realize that this is how the systems run. And I really don't think it's different from the first ones that were the YJs with the very beginning wiring.
The Renix systems.
The Renix systems, they broke them into separate modules. What we now do with a couple of relays and one ECM, they had splattered into, well, that module's over there sparking the thing, and over here I'm shooting fuel in the carburetor.
Yeah.
And
now we have a multiplexer network.
Yeah. And it's really pretty simple. Scott's got another bad joke coming.
No, it's not a bad joke.
Oh.
It's just now, as I said, we have the rolling iStore or the rolling iPhone.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, that's the 2021s. It's like, I'm waiting. That one generation Jeep's going to start giving you, when you turn on the radio, it's going to start sending you ads, pop-up ads and shopping information.
Well, look at that, kid. It's time to go.
Sorry, my cynicism runs over.
Oh, you were trying to look up Mastercraft C8's MasterCard? No.
Anyway, folks, how are we doing time-wise, boss?
We're a minute 21 in. That's right, hour 21 in.
Whoa, did we really go an hour and 21 minutes?
Yeah, well, this has been a good show. This has been a good heavy tech show. They all keep saying this, less fart jokes, more Kevin Tech.
Well, I don't know about that, but guys, thanks for putting up with me. This is, if you haven't figured out, this has been a busy couple of weeks for me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
This couple of weeks. Again, thanks to everybody who came to Crawling for the Fallen and hunted us down, particularly the poor gentleman who was hunting us down, and we were always either out getting lunch or walking the event. He finally did catch up with us at the end, and so thank you for your tenaciousness to chase us down. All the folks that stopped in and wanted to look at the YJ and slightly altered in person. Yes, the snorkel is solid cast aluminum, and people are like, yes, you can shake the Jeep with the snorkel. It won't hurt it. Go ahead.
And a big thank you to Chrissy for allowing us to be part of this.
Yes, thank you, Chrissy. And
a big thank you to our Patreons who allowed us to help get the 500 or the 100 luminaries and donate some money. So a big thank you to all of our Patreons.
Yes, you were the ones who donated to the cause as much as we did. We just were the direction. So again, folks, I think we're running out of time. I think it's enough talking. Time to lock up, put the Jeep in 4-low, and hit the trail.
And I also think that we should always wheel legal and tread lightly. Plus, take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the trail.
And be sure to check in for our next podcast of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. That'll be out the 15th of December as we're getting close to hearing sleigh bells in the sky.
And also hearing that Santa has a dirty job. So check out Mike and Rich.
Mike and Rich have
another Rowan Rich. One of the two.
Rowan Rich,
they got
Mike Rowe.
Yeah.
And they have released a single on YouTube and on other internet forums called Santa Has a Dirty Job.
It's hilarious.
It's great. It's actually a pretty neat song.
Unfortunately, we don't own the rights, so we can't play it here. But check it out.
Check it out. All right, folks. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.